This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's pod. This is a show for the week of March 27th, 2023. This week we discuss Rolly Crump, who passed away this week, and his contributions to the Disney universe. Is that the right way to say it? Because I was going to say the world of Disney, but that's also a store, so that doesn't make sense either. But all of his accomplishments and contributions to what we know today, plus our takes on character meals and our favorite crowd levels in the parks. So this is a conversation we had, I think 2 years ago, once all the parks started opening, we got stories. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. But it's all about crowd levels. What is right? What's the Goldilocks of crowds in the parks? And our DBC engagement this week on designing our own character meal in a restaurant, specifically villain themed. I believe that we had that caveat, Phil.
That was the idea. Yeah, for the if there's a new villain's land, how would you design the character meal for that land?
So that's coming up. But first, what's going on in our Disney World, Phil?
Yeah, so the big news this week is that Disney and the unions have reached an agreement for the cast members at Walt Disney World.
All right.
So all 6 of the STCCU unions have put forth their support for this agreement and will propose that all the cast members vote yes to ratify this. So obviously there was a lot of debate between Disney and the union on the pay increase and stuff like that, and really more the scale of it and the timing of that. But in the end, what they've agreed to is that as soon as it's ratified, the minimum pay, which is currently $15 an hour, will go right up to $17 an hour, and they will all receive back pay back to $16 an hour, effective back to October of last year, which I know that was a big sticking point. Disney didn't want to give back pay. They kind of agreed to do it at a lower amount. By this December, it will be up to $18 an hour. Then there'll be 50 cents next year, and then $1 each of 2025 and 2026. Meaning by 2026, believe October is the time frame that happened. The minimum salary at Disney will be $20.50, which obviously the union and Disney are putting forth that people are currently making $15 an hour. That's about a 36% increase over what they're making. But everybody is going up. It's not just the minimum salary. So they said everybody over that time frame will see at least a $5.50 increase. And they shared, some examples for people that were making more than the minimum already, like bus drivers and housekeeping and stuff like that.
So what was the last raise in minimum wage? What was it? You had it in there just a moment ago. It was
the last
$15 an hour. When was that put in place?
I believe that they got up to $15 an hour back in 2019, I think it was. But I have to go back and check. I didn't see that, but it's been 15 for a couple of years now. That was kind of the big thing, was Disney moving it up to 15 from where it had, I think a decade ago it was only like $10 or even less than that.
I just want to give people listening, because there's a lot of silly arguments, not on our Discord, but on the message boards across the world about, oh, this is too much. How dare we spend $15 an hour on an entry-level job? All those kind of silly kind of conversations. Just to give you an idea, somebody that was making $15 an hour in 2019 before the world shut down, that is equivalent to $17.93 as of today. So basically, by the end of the year, cast members' minimum pay is going to be matching the buying power of their minimum pay 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Or almost 4 years ago, I should say, at this point.
And
so,
I know,
good.
I was just going to say, and I know just cost of living in the Orlando area has even outpaced that, because I saw one stat that I think it was when it went up to $15 an hour, like the cost of living in the area was around 12 something an hour. So they were making more than that. Between then and now, it's up to over $19 an hour. So they were like, it was far outpacing, even if they had been making a little bit more. So they're kind of, this obviously help a lot, but it's still not, they're not going to be, booking their all expense paid trips to Europe or anything like that.
No, I just want to comment. I don't think we have anybody in our audience out there that would argue against this or whatever. But when you go back, well, when I was younger, minimum wage was this or whatever. Just go find an inflation calculator somewhere and put in the years and the numbers, and it'll all make sense to you. Just anyway, I'm very happy for the cast members to get a little bit of an increase. And again, this is just minimum pay. And I hope those that are out there find the ability to move up and earn more. Because we want all those cast members to be there a long time. We don't want cast members that are there for only 6 months and then leave because they find higher paying jobs elsewhere, like Universal or something else like that. So glad to see Disney keeping pace.
Exactly. They really needed to at least keep pace. We know Universal recently had moved up to $17 an hour, and a lot of people had moved over there, but a lot of people also look, I want to work for Disney. I just want to be able to pay my bills. And so I think that's really where this is moving. And there's going to be just more and more competition once Universal opens up Epic Universe and things like that. So they got to continue to be an attractive place. And I will also add there were some other benefits in there. One of the big ones highlighted is that everybody will receive 8 weeks of child bonding. They're calling it child bonding instead of maternity leave or whatever. But that's a nice thing to have too.
That's important.
Yep. So So, and just to add to your point, other thing we've seen people is like, oh, well, get ready for $50 for Genie Plus and all that, because now they got to pay the cast members. That's, first of all, prices are going to go up anyway. And I think it was on our Discord, I saw Castistone put it a good way. It was like, Disney doesn't look at okay, here's our expenses. We need to charge $1 more than that or whatever. They say, we're charging what people will pay. So it doesn't really matter what the cast members necessarily making. That's not going to drive whether prices are going up or down. And we've seen, discounts now coming for the hotels. So that's, they wouldn't have, if it was directly correlated, they wouldn't have been doing that. So,
I mean, this is cost of business, right? If they want to attract talent, because there's people, we still have a lot of open positions that are front of the line cast or back of house stuff at restaurants. They are losing potential new hires to other theme parks that are paying more money. Because if you're a person that's working minimum wage, and you don't have that uber love for Disney where you want to work for Disney no matter what, you're going to go across the street to somewhere else that's paying $1 or more an hour for sure. And Castistone actually had another good point that was rather funny. And I believe he had posted this on WDW Magic forums. He said, well, guests are basically paying $15 an hour just to be in the park for the most part. And if you're just a new person that's just your job is just to wave people as they're coming in, you just have to wave to 3 people and you've earned your or $15 an hour type of thing. So Disney's making plenty of money for
they could. I mean, it's not insignificant or whatever, but they can definitely cover the cost. And I think the profits from the theme parks have been covering a lot of costs from Disney Plus and stuff like that anyway.
Yes.
So now at least they can cover the costs for their actual employees that bring a lot of the
don't
value.
Blame cast members for your increase in prices. Blame She-Hulk and The Mandalorian.
But speaking of the parks, there's also been a few dining updates, and this kind of led me to having a bit this between this and our DVC engagement. I was thinking this is a little bit of a dining heavy episode, but it was announced that right now at Akershus in Epcot, you can only go there for dinner, but it was announced starting May 14th, they will return for lunch and also breakfast, which was interesting because a lot of the locations hadn't been doing breakfast, like Garden Grill still isn't doing breakfast and stuff like that. But breakfast will be returning as well to Akershus. So another place opening, another option for food, and another character meal that's going to be open more. So that's definitely a good sign.
I wanted to do Akershus in December. Obviously, open back up just dinner only. It's typically a little less expensive, but not by much.
Right.
But I'd rather do one of these during the day than at night. Anyway, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, we've always liked the breakfast there. They have a really good it's like cheesy potato casserole that's part of it and stuff like that. And it's like when it was available, we would do pre-park opening reservations for there, so you get in early and bang it out, and then get right online for Frozen Ever After and stuff like that. But the other new item is that Roundup Rodeo BBQ opened this past Thursday to generally positive reviews. I know this was one I was a little skeptical on. I think a lot of people were. Could Disney do barbecue well in mass quantities and stuff like that? So obviously all the bloggers and vloggers and everybody's been there. We also had a number of people from our Discord, including friends of the show. Julie was there. Zach was just there today, along with 19 Fiddle 2, and TL Madden was there as well. So we're getting a lot of feedback right away to this show, and overall a lot. And I say show because there are a lot of show elements to it, and just the theming of it in general, and how in theme the cast members seem to be. really makes it like kind of a fun experience. The interesting thing I'm finding from the food is that I think for the most part, people are having positive things to say, but they're all liking different things. Like from one review, it's like the ribs were the best thing. And then you go to another review and the ribs were dry, or another review, the chicken's dry, but then the next one, the chicken was the best thing. So it sounds like generally, as long as you're okay with that type of food, you'll find something you like, and then you can just keep ordering more of that. But one thing that a few people point out, it seems like a lot of food. Like even the some of the vloggers I've seen, they were like, I needed to be rolled out of there because I just kept eating.
Well, that's generally what happens with barbecue,
Yeah.
unless you're limited to a plate like at other fast food places. I can't get any more.
Yeah.
But barbecue's delicious.
But they're saying even just the initial plate, I know Julie mentioned that it just felt like there was way too much food, like for two people that they were there. It's like, why are they giving me this much food to start with? Like, give me less, and then I can always order more of what I wanted. And then TL Madden said that overall they really liked it, but feels like they could use a couple more like kid-friendly items because it's all just one menu. They bring it out. I mean, there's the regular menu and then a plant-based menu, but it's not like there's a kids menu.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it could use, chicken fingers or something like that for some kids. But they do have like mac and cheese and there's probably something most kids could find. But that was one comment he had that, the tater tots came with like two different sauces on top. So, if you're worried about, you can order those on the side. So maybe do things like
That's
that
good.
just to make it a little bit more kid
Yeah.
friendly. But overall, I think it's honestly, it's been more positive than I was expecting. And this was one I was planning on passing up just because of the cost, really. Because especially with two of my kids now being Disney adults, are they going to eat $45 worth of food? But
No.
seeing the experiences, seeing like positive reaction to the food and the drinks, it's making me a little bit more appealing. But I think I'll decide and see if the kids think they'll actually eat the food or not. But it's swaying me a little bit, but we'll see.
I mean, it looks great in there. All the comments I've seen are positive, except for like I didn't like this or that. But generally, everybody had a good time. The one thing I like about this style restaurant is it's slightly. I mean, even though it's a one price for everybody, it's still $20 cheaper than a character meal.
Yeah.
So that's always a good thing. But paying for, gosh, with one Disney adult as a child that's just turning 10, we would be doing, what is it? That's almost still close to $200 for a family of 5 with 3 adults and 2 kids at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be that excited to eat, all I can eat barbecue in the Florida heat for that much money.
I did hear
more
that
comfortable.
they did say it was like the lighting was pretty dim. I saw some comments on that, and that it was heavily air conditioned, so it could also become like a really nice break from your summer day in Hollywood Studios.
Well, I mean, I just don't like being full and walking around
for sure
heated areas. But like my only thing is I would love, what I like is more restaurants that are not just character driven, that are more themed, which is great.
Absolutely.
I would just love to get back to where I can spend $20 to $30 a person, not $40 to $60 a person. So that's my only thing that doesn't have me excited for this. I think the next time that I go down to Disney, it's going to be very light on sit down meals.
Yeah.
If at all.
Because a lot of them are getting. I mean, obviously, you could do it if you just share appetizers. But if you're most of these restaurants, if you get an appetizer, an entree, and dessert, you're probably spending $45 anyway.
Right, but I don't. I mean, as much as I like eating,
right.
I don't want to do that for every single meal now. I mean, paying for it's ridiculous.
But I definitely agree with you about the theming and just, it definitely feels like a restaurant that isn't going to be in your town, right? It's a place
they did a good job with that.
It's only going to be at Disney. So, that always has an appeal to me.
100%.
And the last news item is that artwork was shared or leaked, I guess, from the canceled Mary Poppins attraction that was originally announced as part of the Epcot update that would have been in the UK pavilion over in Epcot and World Showcase. And it would have featured sort of like an Enchanted Tales with Belle type entrance moment, some sort of reveal magic moment for going into the actual experience. And then it would have been an indoor teacup style ride that would have been themed after the Royal Dalton Music Hall scene from the second movie, from Mary Poppins Returns. So definitely a lot of different reaction to this. It's always kind of cool to see. I always like seeing kind of engineering in the background and like top down views of how these attractions may have looked and stuff like that. So I don't know. What were your thoughts when you saw this? Were you bummed that it's canceled, or were you kind of like, that seemed like a meh idea, so maybe it's not the worst thing that it didn't happen?
I'm bummed it's canceled because Epcot just needs more stuff, right?
Yep.
It's the very unbalanced park at this moment, so anything would be welcome. That's first of all. Second of all, I'm even more excited that they were considering something that was not a thrill ride or a must do, because it was basically a spinner ride for the most part. So I like that they're adding. What would you consider? Would this be like a C ticket?
Yeah, something
almost,
like this.
maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it would have the cool entrance and stuff, so it's probably not an A ticket or something, but it put it probably a C ticket level.
So I'm never gonna poo poo like cool entrances and a quick little ride. That's fun. Like the park needs not thousands, hundreds of these across all 4 parks, right? We need more of that stuff. Would I have done it with teacups specifically? No, that seemed a little odd to me. That people always thought like carousel or something else more like that, or maybe they could. I mean, if you wanted to make it like an e-ticket, you could have had like you're on the carousel horses, but then they come apart and then they whatever. That seems extremely complicated. So I don't know, like. I vaguely remember some of Mary Poppins Returns. We watched it.
Yeah,
once,
I mean,
and
I guess
watched it
they're
again.
calling it a teacup style ride. I think it actually would have looked like the bowls that they used in that scene where that she started spinning it around, and that's when they like magically went into the scene and stuff like that. So it does fit that. Well, that's what they called it. They called it a teacup style ride, but I think it actually would have been bowls. But yeah, that's where it came from. So it did have some connection to the movie. But yeah, the fact that you actually have to think about it, it's not like the first thing that comes to your mind when you think Mary Poppins.
I'm okay with it though. I mean, I think it would have been an awesome add to the parks, and I'm a little sad because I want more Enchanted Tales with Belle style things across property. I think we were talking about that a couple weeks ago.
Yep. Yeah, my thoughts are definitely similar. I'm bummed that it's not there. Probably wouldn't have been my first choice for specifics of what I would have done. I always had that idea of using the Rollickin' Roadsters ride system, but with carousel horses like you described. Obviously, even going back to doing like a classic dark ride would have been cool. Just recently, I thought of the idea they could use projections like they use in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, where you don't know if you're going to get scenes from the first movie or the second movie until you're in the ride and stuff like that. Like they could have done some cool things like that, that maybe were a little bit more about the movie and more kind of fully immersive into everything that is Mary Poppins versus just picking this one scene. But it fully agree. I would have preferred something versus nothing. And it sounded like a fun ride, and definitely agree. We need more seat tickets around.
I mean, I don't think they could have invested that much more money than kind of a spinning type of ride for, as well as Mary Poppins Returns did in the box office. So I think it's an appropriate level of investment for that newish IP, I guess.
Right. And that'll do it for the news. But that'll take us to our takes, and we were going to talk about dining related here too. We're going to talk about character meals. And I was like wondering, have we talked about this before? So I did like a search through our old show notes, and we did like something about character meals back in 2020. So it's been a little while since we've covered it. Yeah. So, and it wasn't our take. So this is our takes on character meals. So which character meals do we think are overrated, properly rated, or underrated? Do you want to give your overrated first, Jason?
I do. I don't know if I actually agree with myself on this one. And you know what I want to say? It's like, you mentioned 2020, and I think at the top of the show we should have said something. This is our 3-year anniversary show. Not that we keep count for anything. Our first show was on March 22nd. I just scrolled down to double check that date, which is 3 years ago. We don't keep track of episode numbers like publicly. We do it in our show notes.
Yeah.
But it's been 3 years. Maybe we could talk about that next week after 3 years is kind of washed through us. So we can get some retrospect. But okay, so overrated. I put Crystal Palace, right? I don't know why to me, this one just moved recently from properly rated and hit overrated.
Okay.
And the only reason why I say that, I've been to Crystal Palace every single trip that we've gone to Walt Disney World. I think at least 4 out of the last 5 times that I've gone with my kids. And the food is still good. The characters it's not as awesome as it used to be. They don't do like the parades running around. Not when I was there. And I don't know. There's something about it that was just slightly different. And maybe it's just my kids are getting older and we've done it so many times. It seems getting a little, old or stale, so to speak. But I don't want to overrate it too much, only because it's still beautiful inside. It's the only place you get to meet Winnie the Pooh and all of them up close. And but I think people really go out of the way and say Crystal Palace is awesome. I think I like the building more than the whole character experience, anything else. So I think it's slightly overrated. Have you been there
We haven't been there recently. We did it, when our kids were younger, and it was a place we used to actually we did the breakfast there a couple times, and we enjoyed it. But it's definitely about getting to meet those characters, which everybody loves Winnie the Pooh. I'm not trying to say
Right.
it's only, but it feels a little more for younger kids than maybe some of the other character meals. So again, as the kids are getting older, it's less appealing. And I just remember it definitely was one of those meals where the bill came at the end, and you're like, "Wow, that was pricey. That was a lot for that experience."
My thought as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I if I had to pick one, I probably would pick over it, because I do know some people absolutely love it. It's like we do this every trip and that sort of thing. And I don't think it's like a terrible place, and especially if you like Pooh and stuff like that. That sounded like a really weird statement to say.
I totally missed that until you brought that up. Okay. But my only thing is, I totally agree with you. And maybe this is something Disney kind of needs to hear about. Maybe, and I guess that they're not having any trouble filling seats. But the fact that this is the first time I went there outside the Disney dining plan, and I'm like, I am never going back again, because that was not worth all that money that I spent for that experience. But I would go if it's part of a 1 credit, thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's already so. Come on, Disney. There's a little bit.
I'm definitely not
some feedback.
A huge proponent in general of the dining plan. It just generally didn't work for us. But if you were wanting to do character meals and you had kids that, especially if the kids that were still the child price, that it was a huge savings, and it was a huge, like, it definitely made it seem much easier. And if you pay for that and you're like, we're hitting up 4 or 5 character meals, you definitely felt like you got that full Disney experience, and you didn't have that sticker shock at the end of each meal.
100%. What was your overrated one?
So my overrated is probably for similar reasons. I picked Chef Mickey's. I know some people like it doesn't necessarily have the best opinion of the food there. When we went, I actually thought it was okay, but it's kind of the same thing where I feel like some people are like, check out my meals, and they have Chef Mickey's like 2 or 3 times, like during their vacation, like how it's like mission critical for some people to get there all the time, because I guess it's the Fab Five, it's in the, the contemporary, it just kind of has that iconic look to it and stuff. But I don't think you're missing much if you don't get it in. Like, it was a fine meal when we went, we had some good interactions with Donald and Goofy and stuff, but I don't know. I don't think it's something that, your trip's ruined if you don't get in there 3 times during your trip or anything like that. But for some people, it just seems like that's the meal we have to get every single trip. And I don't really get that.
For me personally, I think it's a really cool. I mean, to me, I don't overrate it, but it's borderline, right? Yeah. It's almost overrated for me. I do like taking a break from the parks and walking over to the Contemporary. I dig that part of it. So that experience, if that's the way you do things, like you go from Magic Kingdom to the Contemporary, I always like that. I like being in the Contemporary. If I'm not staying there, obviously I want to see, the artwork and everything else like that. But the food is average, right? For average Disney fare. As much as I love meeting the Fab Five, depending on where you're sitting kind of like almost out in the open. It's like too crowded. So
it can be real noisy too.
Exactly. There's some spots like in the sides and the corners that are really nice to sit in, but if you don't get one, it just feels like you're in a giant cafeteria, which is never a fun thing. My properly rated one, which I think is in a lot of people's overrated category, is Cinderella's Royal Table.
Yeah.
I think if you're excited about this and you don't mind the price tag, because there is a premium for that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You get to eat in the castle. So I think this should be, do it once in one of your trips in a lifetime. So if you have a once in a lifetime trip, get Cinderella's Royal Table, because now it's all back up and running as it used to be, because all the princesses are back. It's just not meeting Cinderella downstairs, and you get to go in and you get to relax. The food's not bad either. It's probably, I would say, second to your properly rated. No, excuse me. We're talking. This was something from a different show. Anyway, to my favorite, I misread something. So my favorite restaurant is Skipper's Canteen in Magic Kingdom, as we both know, and I think Cinderella's Royal Table is the second best sit down meal as far as quality of food, in my opinion, to that one. So I think you're getting your money's worth, food wise, entertainment wise, and the fact that if you weren't in the castle, it would be overrated. But since you are in the castle, that pushes it over for that price tag.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, especially if it's, for some people are like, oh, I don't know about it, it's so expensive. Oh, if you've never done it, it's definitely worth it to do it once.
Yep, 100%.
My properly rated is Tusker House over at Disney Animal Kingdom. I put properly rated because I think most people really enjoy it. I think it has some of the best food of any kind of character meal or any buffet. You have a lot of American food, but you also have a lot of the variety with some of the more African-inspired dishes. I've always had really good character interaction there. They're in their fun, kind of wildlife explorer, park ranger type outfits, which, so you get to see the characters in different outfits. But I think that's how most people look at it. They look at it as like better than, food that's better than most of the character meals or buffets. And, it's kind of not, I don't want to say a must do, but if people are like, which character meal should I do? If I'm, I don't necessarily want princesses and stuff like that, but I want to see the characters. This is one that a lot of people suggest. So I think it's properly rated for that reason.
This one is what I would be willing to spend all that money on to go.
Mm-hmm.
The food is absolutely fantastic. I would not rate this properly rated. I would probably do this underrated. This would have been my underrated one if it wasn't your properly rated one.
Okay.
Only because I don't think enough people have gone to this, right? So I think once people go, the properly rated is like, this is awesome, right? Everybody that has gone loves it. It thinks it's pretty amazing, but I don't think it's. I mean, I guess it hit critical mass because it's always full. But I mean, you don't hear a lot of like talk about it when you think character meal.
That's
most
true.
People talk about all the other stuff, right?
Yeah, I definitely think for people that have maybe had never gone to Disney World and they're like, well, which meals do I want to do? They don't even know about Tusker House. But I think if they ask anyone, it'll be one of the first ones that's suggested to them.
So I think it's properly rated in uber Disney fans like us, but it's probably underrated in the general population of Walt Disney World vacationers.
That's fair.
I think that's fair, right?
Yep.
So my underrated one is Akershus. The only reason why I underrate this one is because most people want a princess meal, and they always try to get into Cinderella's royal table. So I'm going to have a little bit of a paradox in the properly rated, underrated thing. I always say you have to go to Cinderella's royal table at least once because it's definitely properly rated. It's a great experience. But if you don't want to spend the money, you can't get into there. Akershus, I think, has almost as good of food. I don't know what they're serving at Cinderella's royal table now, but our Akershus dinner back in December was absolutely fantastic. So I think even though people are going, I don't think it's ever had gone to the level of like, there's one princess. Oh wait, there's another princess meal. It's an Akershus in Epcot, and they don't think about it right when they're thinking about princess meals. And again, this is more for the general Walt Disney World vacationers, not the people like us who know every single restaurant everywhere type of thing. So that's my underrated is Akershus.
I think that's a fair take. It almost sometimes sounds like, it's the backup princess meal.
Yes.
And it's
exactly.
Especially for the price, it's just as good.
100%.
My underrated is Garden Grill. I think this falls into another one of like people who go and know it. It becomes one of their favorites, but if for the general population, you don't always know of it or think about it. Garden Grill is in the Land Pavilion in Epcot, and it has, Mickey and Pluto and the Chipmunks, and it's got really good food. We've always enjoyed it. They're currently not doing breakfast. We're hoping they bring that back because we enjoyed the breakfast, but the other meals are good too. And it also rotates. It goes around the Living with the Land ride. So, how many restaurants do people eat at that rotates while they're on it? So I think that's an underrated one because it's got great characters. Usually that you'll get to see them a couple times. They come around. It's just the way it seems to work there. We've always really enjoyed the food, and it's got that added element of rotating. So I think it kind of ticks a lot of the boxes of being unique and kind of Disney specific, but having food that is better than I think a lot of the character meals.
That's fair. I've never eaten here. We almost did, but my wife took one look at the menu and then watched a video of it, and she's like, no, I think we could spend our money elsewhere. So she would probably say that's overrated with us having any experience being there at this point. So,
it's definitely kind of like, it's not fancy food. It's like plated family style, and it's like got turkey and stuffing and things like that, kind of just more like, I don't know if Cracker Barrel-ish type food or whatever. So it's not fancy, but we really enjoyed it. Like we thought it was tasty, and everybody found something they liked. And, the dessert was always good and stuff like that. So we thought it was good, but I can definitely see, like, if you just look at the menu and see a photo of it, you're going to be like, oh, there's definitely like more unique food elsewhere. And I would agree with that. But sometimes you just want, good, solid
nice
food.
And simple.
This delivers that quite well.
That's fair enough. I've never eaten there, so I can't really rate it at all. So
Or maybe it was a friend of mine because I was asking my kids where do they want to get my teenager brought up garden grill. So I guess if she likes it, then that's a good
recognizable
stamp of
food's always
approval.
good, especially when they're Disney adults at this point. Right?
Exactly.
You know they're going to eat it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a safer place. Yeah. So that'll do it for our takes. Reminder of our social media accounts: we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, all at the DBC Pod. Our Discord server, where we've had a couple new members, which I want to welcome Ali.Cohen and Chicken Salt both joined, and Ali already started chiming in with some comments and stuff, so that was good to see. And then the Happily Ever After, I should have had this open, but the Happily Ever After countdown is now at 9. Single digit dance for Happily Ever After. So that is pretty exciting for people that are fans of that show. So that is coming back.
Awesome. All right. So this week's topic is something I was thinking about. So I always think about like topics usually come from what am I thinking about? and over the last week, I wasn't thinking about much of Disney because I was away on business all week, and I had no time in my brain for Disney. But so when I was sitting down today, I'm like, okay, when I now just like clear my mind, think about Disney, think about a topic, all the other normal things pop up is the affordability. We were talking about cast member stuff already in the news. That was a big thing I was kind of engaged with online. So, but then as it slowly comes out, like another thing that's about all these elements that are kind of in the zeitgeist of Walt Disney World with cost and crowds is crowds, right? That's the other side of cost. Is there value for your money? So I've gone when there's very low crowds, during the mask policy era of post-COVID. And then I've gone when it's super busy, and I've gone kind of slightly busy, which I guess back in December when both of us went. So that got me thinking, what is our ideal level of crowds at Walt Disney World? Is it great when there's like nobody there? Because I've done that. Is it great when it's super crowded? I don't think anybody would think that. But there's got to be some level of crowd level that's good for you. And I guess there's no right or wrong answer here. So I'm gonna let you go first. If the park is empty, is that the best, or do you need some level of attendance to make it kind of feel fun and kinetic? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely need. I don't know how to quantify like what that sweet spot is, but I definitely need people in there. I wouldn't want to go. I remember, right after they reopened after the pandemic, you were seeing all those photos where it looked like a ghost town and people were just kind of wandering around and not seeing any other people. Like, I mean, that was probably cool to do it once, but like, that's not my ideal level. I think other guests there help bring about what Disney is. And I know, you just want, I don't really I'm not outgoing normally, but at Disney, you just start talking to people. And I know same thing is true for my teenager. Mm-hmm. She's kind of introverted, but at Disney, she winds up just talking to people and you just meet people. And I think that adds to it. When you're watching Fantasmic and the whole crowd is, it's a full stadium and everyone's cheering along. It's not the same if it was, 3/4 empty or whatever like that. Yeah. So I'm not sure what the right level, because obviously once I was seeing photos of these lines, from spring break where it was like, lines just wrapped around and like 2-hour waits for the Haunted Mansion and stuff. Mm-hmm. like that's obviously way too much. But yeah, I think it's kind of, there's that sweet spot in the middle where there's enough people there that it adds to it. And I think having some lines is okay because it kind of builds anticipation and you get time to talk to your family and stuff like that. So I don't mind, 20-minute lines for things and stuff like that. It's just when everything feels like an hour or more, then I think it starts to be, and you just start seeing people like sitting on the curb or around because they're just tired of doing anything or whatever, like that, I think starts taking away from it. So I don't know what that means. Is that a crowd level of a 6? Out of 10 that I like, or 5 or 6? I don't know what the number is. I'm not looking
for a number,
but it's somewhere in that. There's that middle sweet point where there's enough people adding to it, and there's that communal feeling, but it's not 2-hour lines everywhere.
So here's on the low side what I don't want. I don't want to be able to do half the park. I mean, like, I don't want to have to be able to do half the park in like an hour and a half. Like, I don't want to go from ride to ride to ride to ride, and all of a sudden it's lunchtime and I've done 70% of the park. Because while on the surface that's great, you get to go on the rides 3 or 4 times and run around. By the end of the day, you're going to get, like, for example, Magic Kingdom. You're going to get Magic Kingdom burnout because you've crisscrossed the park 100 times, you've done everything, and then the worst thing, in my opinion, is you get tired and bored of the Magic Kingdom, and then you go, and then you just spent all this money to be in the parks. You're done with it, and you're back at the pool, or you're at a restaurant, that type of thing. That was like your Magic Kingdom day, right?
Mhm.
On the other side, like you mentioned, you don't want to be so busy where there's a sea of people where you constantly have to dodge and push through crowds just to get from the hub into any of the spokes.
Yeah.
To me, too much. When there is lines backed up for second tier attractions, like even though I would say Big Thunder Mountain's like a second tier attraction at this point, and the first tier are all the Lightning Lane ones, and
Mhm.
that type of thing. Or when Pirates is there's actually a wait going out of the building, like
Yeah.
that's never a good thing, and that's just too much. Like when the lines are clogging the walkways, too much. However, I think the sweet spot is when all the queues are at least at the starting point, as the starting point is just they're all inside the building where the queue starts, right? You can tap in and join the line. Anytime there's any line that goes beyond that, too crowded.
Anytime they need a cast member that holds a sign,
Yes.
like down the road.
Too crowded. When, like you mentioned, there's people just kind of laying about because it's exhausting and they're too tired. It's too much. Like you want to see people like sitting down and having an ice cream cone or something else like that and relaxing. You don't want them sitting there being like, and like just like basically like exhausted at like 2:00 in the afternoon. You don't want that. You certainly do not want to get to the point where I did last summer where you're seeing trash on the ground and there's not enough janitorial staff or cast members there to kind of keep up with the garbage and all that other stuff. That takes way out of it. So I think the perfect level is probably on the low end for me, like a 4, and the high end, like a 6. And 7 is like still pretty good. But anytime it's 8 or above, I'm just dreading being in any of the parks. So I think if we're going to have to do a touring plans crowd number, 4 to 6 is probably a sweet spot for me.
Yeah,
when
I'd
it
say
comes
similar,
to
and I
go.
have to say I was excited. I started, putting together my spreadsheet for our August trip, and I was looking at the touring plans, and that's what most of the days are like 4s to 6s. So
Yep.
hopefully that keeps up and it's accurate, and I think that'll be that nice sweet spot.
Unless they start dumping more discounts and everybody starts going down at that point. We'll see. All right, let's move on. That was a short one, but I think we want to take some time and talk about a little bit of a DBC expedition again of Mr. Rolly Crump. And I know this was your idea, and you did some research. Why don't you start off with who he is, and as he passed away at the age of 93 this week. So, in case you don't know the name, who was he?
Yep. So Rolly Crump, he was born Roland Fargo Crump on February 27th, 1930 in Alhambra, California. And he had eyes on Disney from a very early age. He was very inspired by the Silly Symphonies movies. There was a really good interview he gave with the LA Times, and he said he recalled that when he was 3 years old, I quote, "My dad took me to see the Three Little Pigs. He knew the projectionist, so we got to go up into the projection booth. All that stuff stuck in my head. I don't know if I was familiar with Disney at the time, but I immediately fell in love with Disney. I wanted to work for Disney. I wanted to draw and just be at Disney. I didn't even know what animation was. I didn't have a clue. And when they hired me, I didn't know why they hired me. I didn't know where they were going to put me. All I knew is I wanted to work for Disney." And he wanted to work for Disney so badly that he actually had to keep secondary jobs. He had a young child at the time. They first hired him in 1952 at the age of 22. And so he, for example, on the weekends, he was making manhole covers just to help cover his bills. But that would allow him to keep working at Disney. So that kind of just shows the dedication that he didn't really care. He just wanted to be at Disney.
Mm-hmm.
So at his early work, he was working at Disney Animation, and he served as an in-between artist and later an assistant animator, and he contributed to such films as Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, and many others. And Walt kind of took a notice of him because his style was definitely a little different, and he was more kind of bold and edgy with some of his things. And so he was hired by Walt into WED Enterprises, which is now Walt Disney Imagineering, in 1959. And he helped design some of the most iconic attractions at the parks, including It's a Small World, the Enchanted Tiki Room, and the Haunted Mansion, or the Museum of the Weird, as it was called when he was initially working on the project. And it would have been a walkthrough attraction and definitely more edgier than the kind of fun, scary that we have now.
Let me jump in here because I think it was it Imagineering that went over this, or no, or was
Yeah.
it one of the episodes basically based on the Haunted Mansion? I think there was like two different like
Yeah.
documentaries. I forget which one it was. But they had like this back and forth as they were trying to design it for Disneyland, and you could see, old video of him and interviews and kind of behind the scenes stuff. So it's really, really cool to kind of hop in on the Haunted Mansion stuff on Disney Plus.
Yep. And he was really into all the tiki stuff. And in fact, he carved the tiki statues. It said they didn't have the technology. They didn't really know what they were doing. So he was using plastic spoons and carving these tiki statues. And they're still standing at the version of the ride at Disneyland. And kind of the style that he gave that tiki room became the inspiration for places like Trader Sam's and even the Polynesian at Walt Disney World. The other big thing that he contributed, he designed the entrance for It's a Small World when the attraction moved to Disneyland in 1966. And the larger than life animated clock at the entrance was straight from his imagination. And it was there's kind of an interesting story where like he drew that up, and some of the lead people on Disneyland were like, but that style, it doesn't fit like with the rest of Fantasyland. And Walt looked at it, was like, I like it, leave it that way. Like that's how it was. Like
I never knew that he designed the clock. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And what I think, building on that, what kind of made him so successful, that was, it feels like he was always true to himself and didn't conform to what like people or what others might think Walt wanted or what the corporation wanted. And he did a lot of pop art on the side. And he said he liked to sneak into the Disney animation library things that he called dopers, which was art that humorously celebrated drugs. So he would kind of sneak them into the art department. He did a lot of paintings of Josephine Baker, and in fact, a comic strip inspired poster that he did in 1967 for a psychedelic rock group, the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band, is actually part of the New York Museum of Modern Art's collection now. So he did a lot of neat things, and he wasn't formally trained. He didn't go to college or anything like that. He just kind of has this innate skill. Another funny story that I read was he found out that Walt Disney's favorite curse word was the S word. So he painted that word onto a rock and left it on Walt's desk, and Walt continued to use it as a paperweight. So
a little tidbit there.
Yeah. So I think, Walt really respected this, that he didn't change, that he didn't, kind of act differently when he was around Walt. And legendary Imagineer Bob Gurr said that they read each other so well. Behind their backs, a lot of people were upset. They would say, Walt likes Rolly best. We heard that all the time. Rolly never acted like he was kowtowing to the boss. He was himself around Walt. And I think Walt picked up on people who are very honest and not trying to play games. The two of them are so direct. A lot of other employees would try to be on their best behavior and try to get Walt's attention, and Rolly didn't do any of that.
Definitely unique individual. The more you learn about him and kind of see him, like, again, in those stories that are on Disney Plus, it's like he was definitely a fun character, I guess.
Yeah. So one of my favorite pieces that Rolly did was he did the Tower of the Four Winds, which was an art installation. It was a series of mobiles that were intertwined and overlapping that had a sun in the middle, and it was designed to be built alongside the It's a Small World attraction at the 1964 World's Fair. The funny thing, though, was Rolly wasn't happy with the final design because it had to be sort of re-engineered to withstand all the weather conditions, because it was going to be outside like that for a couple of years. And so he thought it was over-engineered and fat-looking. And Walt said, "What do you think of it, Rolly?" And he said, "I think it's a piece of crap." Meanwhile, it's like one of my favorite things that he did. So he actually wound up leaving Disney in the 1970s. I think he was starting to feel a little less inspired, and specifically less inspired about Walt Disney World. He felt like the Magic Kingdom there was kind of more of the same, and it didn't have the charm of Disneyland, and they weren't, it wasn't like the Imagineers working together and pushing each other to do new things and stuff like that. So he actually worked on other projects, including for Knott's Berry Farm. But he actually returned to Epcot in the 80s, and he worked on various concepts for Walt Disney World's Epcot, and perhaps most notably helping to oversee the Land Pavilion. So you can see a lot of the style inside that building with the balloons and stuff like that is a lot of his input. And also in the 80s, Marty Sklar and John Hench asked him to develop a team that would stay focused on Disneyland. So while the rest of the company was working on stuff in Florida, and they were even going overseas a lot in the 80s, to Japan and stuff like that, he developed a team which is currently 45 cast members strong, and they just focus on Disneyland and kind of say, what are the different things that we can do to kind of keep plussing the original park. In 2004, he was initiated as a Disney legend, And I like this story too, that at first he trashed the envelope that came with his invitation because he believed the company honor had become more about celebrity than really saluting those that helped shape Disney history. But he decided to go at the end, largely at the urging of his son and also Marty Sklar. And he said he got really choked up when he was presented with a window on Main Street.
That's nice.
So he passed on March 12th, 2023. And I think the world, lost a really original person, somebody who inspired a lot of people. His influence is still felt today. In 2012, he published an autobiography called "It's Kind of a Cute Story," and I've read it several times. I own that. It's if you're interested in learning more about Raleigh, I highly recommend that book.
Yeah, I mean, he was such a such a heavy influence in the history. He had his fingertips on a lot of different aspects of what we know and love, of what we'll revisit. And I'm always curious, as we now move into whatever the next generation of Imagineers are. There's been some a lot of exodus in the last couple of years, and in a call to hire everybody back for as things change, and go read the rumors and all this other stuff about Len Testa said he just visited some of the facilities out west in Disneyland, and he mentioned that the buildings are pretty empty. Whether that means everybody's working from home still, or they're not at full staff. I think it's going to be great to see, or not great, but maybe interesting, hopefully great, that in like 5 or 10 years from now, there'll be a new generation of Imagineers that get these names, as they hit their 50s, 60s, and 70s and become known people. Because I think the only person that we hear on a regular basis name, Joe Rohde, is the only other one that's kind of got like a larger than life name in Discord or forums or Twitter or anything else like that. I don't know if that's my own bias because that's who I've searched out, but I mean, you don't hear that many other Imagineers that would be able to take that kind of mantle, that when they're retired or ready to retire, that they'd be like a Disney legend. It's more like a lot of actors or people have done voices.
I think
stuff like that at this point.
They're definitely still developing. I think we're seeing more they're starting to do that with some of the next generation. I think Tarita Carter is somebody that we're seeing a lot more of, and she's working on, Tiana's Bayou Adventure and has worked on. So yeah, I definitely think they need to kind of, some of those names, really oversaw and like kind of their shadow, I think, casted large.
Yeah.
And I think now it's time for the next generation to kind of come up. So hopefully they'll be given the tools and the budget to do that.
Well, I think I would hope that Disney also promotes them as as they take leadership roles within WDI and other places, that they're given front stage at D23 or somewhere else, so you hear their names and they get credit, not just for if you had to read the coffee table book about the ride or something else like that, their names there, but like hopefully it's more out there so we can they deserve the recognition.
That's a good point.
Make something truly nice.
And I think it almost makes the rides a little bit more meaningful when the people that put their heart into it versus just coming from some corporate entity or something like that. So.
Exactly. 100% behind that. So rest in peace, Crump. And, if you're out in Disneyland, look for his window. And hopefully his legacy lives on and everybody else in the building. It's really great.
So that'll move us on to our DBC engagement topic, which for last week was design the character meal that you would put in a new Villains Land that, like the rumors are that Disney's going to put into the Magic Kingdom. So the idea is like, think about where would it be set? Who would be the villains that were there? What type of food and stuff like that. So I got to say, we got a lot of good responses, really good ideas.
A lot of good ones, yeah.
We got some creative people on Discord, but first, it started off though with Wheezy having to get a little humor in there. Said that the setting would be the Disney executive boardroom, the villain would be Bob Chapek, and the food would be none since there is no dining package available.
That was a good one. I like that one.
But some of the more, I guess, realistic ones, we got a couple. Both Mama Six and Doxy said that they feel it should be at Maleficent's castle. I know we talked in the past about should there be a castle in Villains Land. If it's Maleficent's castle, that's where it would be, and kind of, stick to a lot of the villains that we've associated with that sort of medieval Europe era. So Maleficent, the Evil Queen, stuff like that. And, even something like Jafar. As far as the food, they best they both speak to it being having to be highly themed and kind of things, Mama Six mentions, like the poison apple, like they have at Artist Point, but maybe like a smoking cauldron type beverage, very kind of dark and moody menu. And I think Doxy had a lot of similar ideas and kind of having things, maybe like a sea serpent type looking thing from based on Ursula and stuff like that. So, I think that was kind of a popular idea, kind of fits into that medieval Europe kind of space, just sort of being like the evil version of Fantasyland type things.
Right. I like that.
Yep. T.L. Madden had an interesting idea saying instead of being based on like kind of classic villains and stuff like that, make it based off the descendants. So this way it could be like the kids now that are growing up with those movies, it'll be nostalgic to them and they can bring their kids and stuff like that. The only problem I had with that idea is a lot of the descendants, I think they're kind of trying to be good, like, and not like to be like their parents. So I don't know if it necessarily work, but it's kind of an interesting idea of like kind of basing it off something like that. Ryan W. had the idea of doing House of DeVille, where the idea is that Cruella is opening up a new restaurant where villains of all types can come and dine with her.
Yeah, the only problem is like, what's really in this food, right? You're gonna have to ask some questions about that. I don't know about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's see, Lumpy had the idea of this was an interesting because we know where it's going to be set, or theoretically it's going to be set kind of behind Big Thunder Mountain, which isn't too far from where they're going to have Princess and the Frog and the Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And you're saying maybe build off that, and that it would be a villain's lair sort of run by Dr. Felicier, and have kind of like Cajun food and things like that. But, kind of, with the friends on the other side, I think that could be a really cool setting. And, saying the servers could be kind of shady people that do like card tricks and kind of like, kind of have a little evilness to them as well. And Allie Cohen suggested that she would like to see the Snuggly Duckling, and then all the villains can make appearances and there could be like songs and stuff like that. And so that would, obviously Tangled was set in Germany. So German American food is something that we don't have in Magic Kingdom right now. So.
See, I love Allie's idea. I think somebody's mentioned that at what would you make a character meal before, not specifically villains. I think the only problem is they're likable characters in that tavern. They're not very scary or villainy, right? Other than they're being thieves and bandits. But I don't think it would work as a restaurant in the Magic Kingdom. It would have to be similar to, what is the show that's in Fort Wilderness?
Like Hoop-Dee-Doo?
Yeah, I don't know why my brain froze right there, but it would have to be like a dinner show almost, right? I think you'd have to do that. And I don't think they're going to do that at a park. I think they're going to do that somewhere else. But that's an awesome idea. I would definitely pay money to go see that for sure.
I definitely like the idea of having a lounge as part of it. I was almost picturing like a lounge and a restaurant. So almost like there's, Nomad Lounge and Tiffin's or something like that. Whether it was the Snuggly Duckling, in my head, I was thinking something like a real Gaston's Tavern. And ideally would actually, serve beer and stuff like that as well too. But you see, all the antlers and everything over there, and you have Gaston walking around bragging and stuff like that. But then for the restaurant part, I was trying to think of different ideas because I do think something like Maleficent Castle or whatever makes a lot of sense. Kind of make it like the villain version of eating in Cinderella's castle.
Sure.
But the other idea was like, well, why would like a villain want you? Like, why would they be inviting guests into their restaurant, like regular people? And the person that made me think of was Ursula, who could be like kind of drawing you in because she wants to make a deal with you. Like she wants to have you sign the contract or something like that. So she's like sort of enticing you with all these good food and kind of beverages and things like that. But at the end, it's because she's trying to like make a deal with you in exchange. And I was thinking that when they bring the bill out, it could almost look like the contract that Ariel had to sign and stuff like that.
I like that.
And just setting it could kind of look like like, I don't know if anyone who's been to Mythos over at Universal, it kind of has that like you're in a cave type setting and stuff like that. I think there would be a way to make that kind of cool. So that was the idea I came up with.
I like that idea. I think that's very good, but I think mine is better. I don't know if it's going to be better. So my setting would be inside Jafar's lamp, right?
Oh.
So you're stuck in the lamp with him. So you don't have to have any characters in your meal, but the whole thing would be basically screens, kind of like a bigger 220 concept, right?
Okay.
And then you would have Jafar bouncing around on the screens, but it would have the style of Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, where you would have somebody controlling it and, you know, yelling at somebody because they ordered the wrong food or ordered something that was you know, Jafar's like, that's no good. You should get this one or whatever. Like, just mess with people. But his face would pop all over the place and, you know, taunt people or something else like that because he's trapped, or entice people to let him go and rub the lamp and whatever, you know, that type of. I mean, you could probably do a lot of different jokes in entertainment, but it would be, I don't know, cheaper because you don't have characters running around.
Right.
You can probably build this out kind of like the Millennium Falcon ride, where you have several dining rooms that all look like the lamp, so it doesn't have to be this big giant thing. It'd be relatively inexpensive versus a big giant lamp filled restaurant. Smaller versions of that. And I don't know what kind of food you can serve, anything that you want, right? He's a genie. He could bring you anything that you so wish. So maybe you could have an excuse to have more of an eclectic menu and not be German food or, you know, Italian food or something else like that. You have a little bit for everybody, and it's not out of place because he's a genie. He can get you anything you want, type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's my take on a villain thing. I don't know where that would fit in a villain's land per se, but and that's the first thing that came to mind, and I kind of went with it over the week. So let us know if you liked any of those ideas. I know in Discord we were talking about this almost 4 or 5 days ago, so that was really good. Next week, because we're in honor of Rolly Crump, it says, if you could be hired to Walt Disney Imagineering, what would your dream project be? Right, and I'm not talking. Maybe you can emphasize once you pick. I have 4 options: A, B, C, D, and E. Maybe you could pick one and then yell out what that project might be.
Yeah, for sure.
That type of thing. So first one is, would you A, working on a dark ride, B, working on a thrill ride, C, working on a nighttime spectacular, whether that's something for Animal Kingdom without fireworks or something with fireworks, right? Working on a new hotel, that's D, and E, working on a new restaurant. So what we just kind of went through. So let us know what you think, A, B, C, D, or E. And if you want to get spicy, give me your idea of what that might be. Or you can, you could just say, yeah, I'd rather look on a dark ride and just leave it at that. And we'll be like, okay, fine. See, and then maybe we'll bug you for a better idea. And then maybe you go AFK in Discord and not fill us in and leave us sitting there hoping and wondering what it might be. So that'll be next week. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching, wherever that may be. And it's been 3 years, Phil. What do you think? I think we've done okay.
I think so. I think we've been pretty entertaining and stuff like that. We get a lot of compliments and people seem to listen to us and stuff like that. So hopefully it's a good medium for getting some of your information, and we kind of make you think. And I think more than anything, we want to help plan, give you advice and thoughts when you're planning your next trip, because that's kind of what I think that was kind of where we started with. We both like planning trips.
Exactly.
So hopefully, we've made planning your next trip a little bit more enjoyable and beneficial.
Yes. I still haven't done my dream show yet. I really want to bring some random person on and plan their vacation for them. I mean, they don't have to do it, but I want to sit there and do like what normal, a travel agent would, like, what do you like? What do you this, blah, 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 and then come up with an idea. We do it on Discord all the time when people jump up and ask for advice. I'd love to do it on a live show and put somebody on the spot, on a camera and have some fun with it. That being said, again.
So if you are somebody that wants to do that, let us know. Or if you know somebody, reach out.
we will not torture them too bad when they come on. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Like I said before, it's been 3 wonderful years. Here's to 3 more. And we'll catch you next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye, all.